So, I spoke to Brian yesterday about a lot of things, but today we're going to talk about the council elections that have just happened in the UK. So, Brian, what happened and how did it go for Britain?
Well, first of all, on what happened, the Labour Party did much worse than was expected. You would expect that the opposition party, when a party of government has been there for 8 years, that the opposition party, namely the Labour Party, would be doing very well. And if they were doing very well, they would have taken several hundred seats off the Tories last night, but they didn't. And in fact, amazingly, the Labour Party ended up with a net loss of councils, and the Tories were very much rejoicing in the fact that they held on to many of the councils which Labour said before Thursday that they would take.
Why?
So it's a bad night for Labour, and what that indicates is that on those results, the Labour Party would not have formed a government. In fact, they would have got less MPs than what they have now.
Why don't people like Labour?
I think what happened mainly last night was that the UKIP vote collapsed, and that mainly went to the Tories. And now the reason for that is that I think the 17.4 million Leave voters now have realised that the Labour Party are not serious about leaving the European Union, and what the Labour Party want to do in reality is to remain in the European Union, because their policy now is to remain in the customs union, and if you're a member of the customs union, you are a member of the European Union. And so the Labour Party are not serious about leaving the European Union, and so I think the Leave voters, the UKIP voters, can see that, and they've gone to the Tories as the best option to try and ensure that the Brexit vote is actually honoured.
Do you think the Tories are trustworthy on Brexit?
I think the Tories have let us down badly in the way that they negotiated with the European Union. It's not been a negotiation, it's been a supine surrender, really, and they've given way to the European Union at every stage. So I don't have a lot of confidence in the actual consultations and discussions and negotiations that the Tory party, Tory government have had with the European Union. But at least they want to leave the European Union. It might not be on the terms that I would want, but at least they want to leave. The main point is we need to leave the European Union to get our freedom back as a country, so that we can then be free to trade throughout the world. And I think if that happens, when that happens, the United Kingdom will boom, because the trade will just go up and up.
If you're a UKIP voter, who can you turn to if you're a Eurosceptic? If you don't want the EU, who do you turn to apart from the Tories? Are the Tories the only option?
No, not the only option. Obviously, the For Britain party is very much saying we should get out of the European Union, and we should get out of the European Union now, and we should stop all this messing around which the Tory government are doing. They're taking far, far too long to get out. There's no need for any sort of implementation period at all. They should just get out. But instead of doing that, it's always delay. So there are other options, and For Britain would ensure that we got out very soon.
Isn't it part of Article 50 that you have to get out in 2 years? Could you just get out tomorrow? Is that possible?
Well, officially, we on the 29th of March next year, we leave the European Union. That's 2 years after we actually sent in the Article 50. So we do leave on March 29th, 2019, which is good, which is great. But the Tory government have introduced this implementation period, which will carry on, they now say, until the end of 2020, which is totally unnecessary. We just need to leave.
So you used to be a UKIP member and a UKIP councillor, right? How do you feel personally about seeing UKIP collapse?
Well, I think UKIP has brought a lot of this on themselves. The way that the UKIP leadership election was run was a disgrace, and obviously the wrong person won. But all that's water under the bridge now. We now have the new party in for Britain with Anne-Marie Waters, and we actually did well last night. We only had about 15 candidates in the field, but of those candidates, even though we've only been able to put candidates up just prior to the elections because the Electoral Commission delayed the registration of the party. But despite all that, we were able to put candidates up, and last night our candidates in different wards beat UKIP, they beat the Liberals, they beat the Greens, they beat the Democratic and Veterans Party, and in Hartlepool they came within 25 votes of coming second in the vote. So for a start, that was very good, and I'm hopeful that next year we can put up several hundred candidates.
Do you have people already wanting to be candidates?
Yeah, I've got people contacting me all the while who want to be candidates, and now these elections are over, we'll start the planning for next year's elections to ensure that as many people as possible will be able to vote for Britain, because I think that the policies we're putting forward are policies which the other parties do not advocate or even talk about, and I think people are crying out for them.
So you talk about wanting to be, you're the Eurosceptic party, you're the party that wants to leave the European Union. Are you a single issue party, or do you have a full manifesto?
No, we have a full manifesto, and anybody who's interested can go on the For Britain website and look at the manifesto. It's a very detailed manifesto, and what I find is when I put stuff out on the media about what's in the manifesto, most people say what good policies they are, and pure common sense.
Okay, I want to talk about Labour again, because I really love the idea that they're losing, and I also really love the idea that people realise that they're anti-Semitic now. What happened in Barnet? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it in Barnet. Well, in Barnet, the Labour Party were looking to take Barnet Council, and the Tories only had a small majority, and it ended up with the Tories making gains. I think it was about 7 gains from the Labour Party in Barnet. But I think one of the reasons behind that was the anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and the Jewish community in Barnet came out in force to vote against Labour.
James, what did you see earlier? Well, you were telling me something earlier about Jewish people and Labour.
Well, I read on The Guardian that the Labour campaigners were knocking on the doors of the Jewish Labour voters, and they were telling them that this time they were not going to vote for them because they're an anti-Semitic party.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. If you look at what their leading members say and what they do, yes, they're clearly anti-Semitic, and no doubt about that. And that they are not taking action against the people who are anti-Semitic in the party, and that's one of the reasons why the Jewish community are so upset, because it's quite obvious that there's certain elements within the Labour Party who are anti-Semitic, and the Labour Party have been very slow to take action to remove those people. Is
there a correlation between Labour pandering to the Muslim vote and being anti-Semitic?
I think there is, and Gerald Batten from UKIP did raise this on television, and he's right. There's no doubt about it. The Labour Party are pandering for the Muslim vote. The Muslim vote is far higher than the Jewish vote, and so I think Gerald Batten was right on that one. That one of the reasons why the Labour Party have been so slow to tackle the anti-Semitism is because of the fact that they are pandering to the Muslim vote.
All right. So last time we spoke, we talked about a lot of things, but just not in much detail. So this time maybe we can talk a bit more about things like the House of Lords. Yesterday when I spoke to you, or a few days ago, you were tweeting a lot about the House of Lords. How do you feel about those guys?
Well, I get very angry with the House of Lords because it is sheer arrogance that they think that they know better than the 17.4 million who voted for Brexit. The House of Lords is not elected. The people there are appointed. They're there for life. They get £305 a day. They get subsidised food and drink. And it's about time they were just abolished. It's just mind-numbing, the fact that they think they know better. And how can a democracy, a so-called mother of parliament, have 800 people in the House of Lords dictating to us who've never been elected? How can that be right, a democracy?
It's not right. Also, I saw on your Twitter feed, you mentioned that there are how many Liberal Democrat Lords and how many Liberal Democrat MPs?
Well, there's about 100 Liberal Democrat Lords, and there's about 14 Liberal Democrat MPs. So it's totally out of proportion. There's one Liberal Democrat Lord, Lord Roberts from Llandudno in Wales. He stood for Parliament 5 times. He got defeated 5 times, and as compensation, he was put in the House of Lords. Then the other day, he was calling Mrs. May, the Prime Minister, Hitler. Incredible.
Wow.
So do you think it should be abolished or democratized? Because that's one thing that a lot of people debate about. Because is it savable?
No, not in my view. It's the part. For Britain doesn't have a policy on this at the moment, and that's one of the policy areas which we're going to put to the membership for their consideration. But my view definitely is it should be abolished. There's no need for it. Most of the countries in the world don't have a second chamber. There's no need for a second chamber, and it should be just abolished and the money saved.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's talk about. What do you think, Sam? We've got a list of topics.
Got a list. All right,
we've got a list of topics. What should we look at?
Free speech.
Free speech. Do we still have free speech in the UK?
It's been reduced because of the fact that you are limited. Vehicles like Twitter, you are limited what you can say on Twitter now, because if you say something which doesn't concur with the views and outline that Twitter put out, then you can get suspended, and people are suspended. Anne-Marie's been suspended. And
have you been suspended?
Suspended forever.
Have you been suspended, Brian?
No, I've not been suspended. I've had 1 or 2 complaints, but nothing in terms of suspension. No.
Yeah, I've been suspended. I made a joke about jihadis, and I got suspended because jihadis are considered a religious minority that need protection on Twitter. Can you believe it? Jihadis. I used the word jihad. I said nothing about Islam. I said nothing about Muslims. I said only the word jihadi, and they banned me for that tweet. Well, they didn't ban me. They suspended me for 12 hours, but it was ridiculous.
Disgraceful.
Absolutely. But do you think that offline? Do you think in our society we have free speech, or do you think it's going? Do you think we're losing it?
No, I think it's going, and we need to be very careful about what's happening here, because we are limited in what we can say, and that with these ridiculous hate crimes which have been introduced, anybody can say they've been the subject to hate crime and just report it to the police, and you can even report a hate crime of what somebody said to somebody else. It doesn't have to be you personally. You can overhear a conversation and say, "Oh, that's a hate crime. I'll report it to the police." The whole law is complete nonsense.
What do you think about Sadiq Khan setting up an entire department of police officers to monitor hate speech on the internet?
Well, again, which is typical of Sadiq Khan, is that he has the wrong priorities. He wants to monitor the social media. I read that there's 900 police on just monitoring social media. I find that hard to believe, but nobody has refuted that. But if that is the case, it does seem incredible. Because what the people of London want is to stop all the murders. There's a murder every 2 days now in London, which is outrageous. And they want to stop the crime. They want to stop the FGM, which there's never been a prosecution of FGM anywhere in the country. And they want people to take action on burglaries and all the rest of it. But they're not doing that. They're not giving the priorities where the priorities should be.
How can that change?
Well, it can change through public opinion, and one of the beauties, the good side of Twitter and Facebook is that we can get the message out there. We have an audience, and so we can use that, and then hopefully that will lead to a mayor being elected who is more in tune with the public of London.
Do you think the free speech rally on May 6th is going to make a blind bit of difference?
It's worth a try. I would support it, but we've got to do everything we can to draw attention to the fact that our freedom of speech is being denied, and that people who come over here to speak at Speaker's Corner are locked up and then deported. Those sort of things are more like a police state.
Yeah, you know all about that. Let's go on to another topic. You choose one, James.
Oh, well, we have Islam.
Islam.
So,
is it the religion of peace?
No, I wouldn't call it a religion of peace. If you look at the terrorism in the world, it's quite clear that a lot of it is coming from Islamic terrorists. There's no doubt about that.
Do you think it's just extremists? Do you think it's just people that take Islam out of context and don't really understand the true meaning, or do you think it's the religion itself?
With Islam, you've got the extremists, but you've also got Muslims. A large number of Muslims who actually support the policies, and like being anti-gay, for example. There's a large. If you look at the opinion polls that have been done on the Muslim population, there's large amounts, surprisingly large amounts, that would support policies like that.
It's interesting because I used to live in Indonesia, which is a Muslim majority country, and they polled the Indonesians about issues like gay rights and about if people should be able to live together in if they're not married. And the British Muslims were marginally more hardline than the Muslims in a Muslim country. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know why that is, but that is very interesting. But there's no doubt that from the opinion polls that a large proportion of Muslims in the UK do support some of the extremist views.
Do you think we're incompatible?
I don't think it's incompatible, but what I think we need to do is to tackle the issue of immigration, and what we would do, we would stop immigration for Britain, would stop immigration from Muslim countries. There's no other party that would do that, and that would be a start. And when you look at the jihadis in the United Kingdom, there was a report some months ago saying that there's up to 35,000 potential jihadis in the United Kingdom. Now, if any of those, or I suspect many of those, are foreign citizens, then they should be deported.
So your party would do like a travel ban, like the way the Trump government has done in the US?
Well, yes, certainly to stop immigration from Muslim countries, yes. But Anne-Marie has spoken recently about a total freeze on immigration across the board. And again, I would agree with that. There's no reason why people need to immigrate into the United Kingdom. If we're short of skills, then we can allow people in on work visas, which are time limited, and once the time is up, they can go back to their home country. There's no need to make people who come into the country British citizens. There's no requirement to do that, and it's clear that the British people want to see a reduction in immigration. The trouble is that none of the political parties are doing anything about it. The Labour Party just want an open door. The Tories say they want to reduce it, but never do. And recently, UKIP, under their new leader, temporary leader, Jeremy Batten, said that he wanted to see immigration up to 50,000 a year. Well, that's far too much. And I support what Anne-Marie said recently in an article, that there should be a freeze.
Okay. So, on that topic, the new Home Secretary has ended the, what's it called, hostile environment, and he's essentially said anyone who's an illegal immigrant isn't going to be given a hard time and forced to leave. What do you think about that?
Well, I think if there's illegal immigrants in the United Kingdom, and there are, the best estimates from Migration Watch in terms of numbers is that there's over 2 million illegal immigrants in the United Kingdom, and that's increasing by 150,000 a year, which is 3,000 a week, which is these are incredible figures, and the illegal immigrants need to be deported. Now, again, I have no hope that the Tory government or any other party will tackle it, and certainly for Britain would tackle it. And what we need is a proper border control. Our current border control, it seems to be fast asleep, and anybody can just walk in. If you've got 3,000 illegal immigrants coming in every week, what are border control doing? They can't be doing much, can they?
I think so. Let's go to our next topic. Choose one.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you about the foreign aid budget, because on your 10-step, the For Britain 10-point plan, it mentions something about removing the foreign aid budget. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the foreign aid budget is a disgrace. It's about 14 billion a year, 14,000 million a year that we're giving away. What For Britain are saying is that we would just abolish the foreign aid budget, and we would only give money overseas if there was an emergency like a famine. We would then contribute, but otherwise that money would be saved and it could be used for the NHS, for schools, for the elderly. Now again, it's one of these common sense policies which I spoke about earlier, which when you say it to people, they say, yeah, I quite agree. And again, we're the only party who are willing to do this, and the vast majority of people support us on this, and so if they want to see it happen, they need to vote for us.
Are there any other parties with a similar policy?
No, there's no other party that would actually abolish foreign aid, and that's what is required. Well, when you consider that the government are borrowing around about 40 billion a year now, every year, 40 billion, and then once they've got this 40 billion in which they're borrowing and have to pay interest on, they give 14 billion away to the foreign aid. It's the economics of the madhouse.
That's right.
They're borrowing money to give it away. How can that be right?
It does seem unusual, right?
Seems mad. Seems absolutely mad. Okay. Are there any more topics we want to talk about with Brian?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
We've run out of our list.
So I want to just go back to the council elections. And was it a good night for Britain? Was it a good night? Was it a bad night? What do you think?
It was a good night because we only had a few candidates in the field because of the limitations put upon us by the Electoral Commission. But in the seats that we fought, we did well. We managed to beat other parties like the UKIP and the Liberals and the Greens and Democrats and the Veterans. And as I say, in Hartlepool, which I think was probably the best result, we came within 25 votes of second place. So that is very encouraging for the future, and I think that next year we'll have several hundred candidates in the field, and we will get councillors elected.
You think you're going to get councillors elected next year?
Absolutely, yeah, of course, yeah.
And when are you going to get your first MP?
Next general election.
Good to hear. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much for talking about the elections with us, and thank you very much for giving us your opinions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.